Ratting is the art of hiding in Apex, either for placement points or just to get the drop on an unsuspecting squad. Some rats opt for the more obvious hiding spots, and some rats take it to the next level with insane places, also known as rat spots, so good that you wonder how they even found them in the first place. Some of these spots were too good and had to be removed for the health of the game, so here are 13 illegal rat spots that had to be removed. As a funny side note, I posted many of these, made them viral, and they were always removed shortly afterwards. Let's start off with number 13. This bridge that connects Energy Depot and Gardens has these small ledges on both sides of the bridge, and the southmost side had this tiny hole that you could crawl into on the way, and if you went all the way in, you'd be near impossible to spot from either direction. For number 12, we have this hole on Olympus between Fight Night and Turbine. This hole in the ceiling was so high up that it could only really be reached by some legends, such as Horizon, and would not only be impossible to reach for the pursuer, but when you were inside of the red spot, you were actually able to see through the cover, giving you an edge just in case any enemy would be running past you or trying to get up. Next up on number 11, probably should be higher on this list, but whatever. We're talking about this specific red spot inside of the large room on Skyhook. By using a movement ability, users could get behind the monitors on either side and stay there for as long as possible, as long as they kept holding their movement key towards the nearest wall as not to slide out of cover. Like some of the spots later in this video, this spot was useful for several endings and would guarantee you a high placement or RP if you were the last one standing on your team, and was so hard to find that you could stay safe while a team is fully set up in the room right underneath you. Number 10 is a real old school red spot that worked on Kings Canyon, with another variety of the same spot making a comeback in World's Edge. We're talking about this sign, on the choke by Containment and by Bunker. In the early days of Apex, you could actually get inside of this sign from the top part and actually walk around inside of it, with the easiest way of getting up there being by taking the balloon from Containment, or as it was formerly called, Cascades. This was patched out pretty early in the game's history, but sort of made a comeback with World's Edge, and you could get on top of this small ledge to hide out inside of the sign. Another OG spot that sort of keeps making the rounds are these trees. Every tree in this image was a fantastic rat spot because you could climb on top of the tree's base and hide out inside of the bushy parts. Speaking of trees, there's one tree that trumps them all, which was this one, which was right outside of the map south of Bunker. While a bit tricky, you could reach this spot with a balloon and stand on a small branch where you'll be able to simply keep standing until the end of the game without actually getting a timer. Since it wasn't an actual out of bounds area, you could also make zip lines to it, but that kind of defeated the purpose. Next up is a spot that wasn't very common and wasn't discovered, or at the very least published, until it was almost too late. This air conditioner spot was available in this style of buildings on World's Edge and could only be reached by certain abilities, and was only really possible to abuse in the factory and the sorting factory POI. I found this spot myself by the end of season 10, but by then the factory POI was already gone and sorting factory was finally removed as well. Speaking of doing things before they are too late, make sure that you hit the like button before you finish the video. That was smooth, wasn't it? On number 7, we have a few glorious red spots that have since been removed, with map geometry that for whatever reason didn't have player collision, meaning that you could simply walk into these objects and stay invisible, or mostly invisible from enemy players, while being able to see them clearly from inside. And if you wanted to, you could just walk right out. So I just spent an hour looking for proof that this spot from 2019 existed, and I had to dig so far and so deep for this clip, but we finally found it on this Reddit post with 2 upvotes. So please excuse the quality, but enjoy the clip. Now this is an incredibly old spot that sparked some controversy as it was abused in early Pro League games, where players could walk into this huge cabinet fridge looking thing and easily hide out from the enemies. There's also this rock by the rest beacon north of Survey Beacon, which you could crouch into and just hide out inside of it. And of course you have this little barrel on Kings Canyon right by artillery. And a more known one would be this bridge right here on Antenna on Stormpoint, which actually sparked some drama because some streamers abused this for RP, but called out others that were using it as well for, you know, to get banned. Nothing happened, it was just a tidbit. Speaking of red spots making it into professional play, on number 6 you have sort of this red spot that was sort of a mix of number 7 and an actual red spot that players assumed was a legal part of the game. We're talking about this route on a tree where there was a respawn beacon in the central Kings Canyon, where players could crawl through some vines and hide hide inside a hole in the tree. Turns out, enemies hiding in this rat spot could see the outside and be slightly visible from the outside looking in. It became apparent that this was an abuse spot when a player was spotted in Apex Legends Preseason Invitational, but couldn't be killed as bullets simply didn't go through those vines. This next spot on number 5 has been abused countless times by rats, predator grinders, and myself, and it seemed so natural that most people just assumed that it would stay in the game. We're talking about this sign between Carrier and Oasis on Olympus. From the outside, it just looks like a holo projection, but if you walk close enough, you might notice that you actually can just walk straight through it. And to make matters worse, stay almost completely hidden from the unsuspecting enemy when you're just chilling inside of the sign. As for number 4, this is this beautiful spot on the Kings Canyon bridges? What do we even call these? Either way, once you were inside of the big room with the windows, users found that you can actually make your way into a small gap in the ceiling to get into the vents, usually by the use of a movement ability such as Pathfinder's Grapple, Loba's Tactical, or even Horizon's Tactical, but some players figured out a way to bounce off of the wall to get up there as well, making it the perfect hiding spot if you're the last person ratting on your team, but you don't happen to have those movement abilities. This was one of the rat spots that were super good, but not really that useful in practicality because at the time, Bloodhound was dominating the meta. On to number 3 is a very well-known spot that was patched out without anyone noticing. We're talking about this spot by the sniper tower between Countdown and Fragment. Users could simply walk up to the wall, climb up a little bit, and find themselves inside of a hole, making themselves near impossible to be spotted unless you climb in there to look for yourself while exposing yourself to the rat inside. On to number 2 is a shout out to the Loba spots. As you all know, Loba's Tactical allows her to teleport to almost any location that the bracelet lands on, when it works, which is great for taking high grounds or just jumping between cover, but players found that the bracelet sometimes works too good and allows you to get into snug spots or even clip through map geometry to reach the most insane spots that you couldn't get into any other way. Most of these spots were one way as well, so Loba to glitch in here would be safe to everything except the zone, which would inevitably kill them a few minutes later. As with the entirety of Stormpoint, there are countless of glitch spots across the game, but here are a few that gained notoriety and then were patched. This spot between Harvester and Fragment allowed the Loba to reach a tiny crevasse, which he could easily hide inside of. There's also plenty of spots like this one, where your Loba could glitch inside of freestanding rocks, being able to see what's going on the outside, but without either side being able to shoot each other. And of course, who could forget when Loba could just bracelet herself off the map by throwing her bracelet into terrain that didn't have a bottom. Good times. Also, if you're enjoying the video so far, I'm going to ask you to be like the 17.4% of everyone watching and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of the daily bangers. While Loba's glitch led to some crazy rat spots, I can't fairly put it into number 1 because at the end of the day, it required an exploit to actually abuse them. Whereas I want to highlight rat spots that any legend could reach and use. So for number 1, there is this rat hole on Kings Canyon, which could be reached by most movement legends, but was the most useful for Horizon as she could lift her entire team up instead. This rat tunnel would span the entire length of the bridge, allowing you to stay inside of the ring as the zone closes. Additionally, there were several endings nearby, which means that you could stay inside of this rat spot in Zone 4, or even in some cases Zone 5, without actually risking yourself. There has been some talks about things that should be added to Apex after August, so check out the video on the screen to learn about those things that the game desperately needs. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.